I reside in an incredibly remote part of Mississippi, in a town so tiny that I believe the population is around 247 people. Here, where everyone knows everyone, it's not unusual for strange things to happen, animals mysteriously going missing or being found slaughtered. Naturally, we chalk these incidents up to coyotes or other wildlife. But deep down, we all feel a lingering unease, an unspoken fear that there might be something more sinister lurking in the shadows. As an avid hunter, I cherish my time in the woods. One morning, I decided to head out early with my bow, a fully decked out Matthews Creed. The sky was still cloaked in darkness when I arrived. Normally, the woods are my sanctuary, a place where I feel at peace. My plan was simple: relax in my stand for a while since I didn't feel like stalking prey that day. As dawn approached, the forest began to awaken. Birds started their morning calls, and the usual chorus of wildlife created a serene, almost magical atmosphere. But then, in an instant, everything changed. The entire patch of woods fell silent, dead silent. The abruptness of it was like a slap in the face, sending a chill down my spine. Frozen with fear, I strained to listen for any sound. My heart raced as my mind raced through possibilities. Oh, shit. Something's out here with me, I thought, my anxiety spiking. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a bear or a bobcat. But even the thought of encountering either terrified me. Bears make noise, but big cats are masters of stealth, and that realization only deepened my dread. Determined to reach my stand, I moved cautiously, bow at the ready. Every step felt like an eternity. When I finally made it, I climbed up, pulled out my knife just in case, and listened intently. The dawn light was breaking, casting an eerie glow through the trees, but the silence persisted. My stand overlooked a shallow creek, its gentle trickle the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. Suddenly, a noise to my right shattered the stillness. Something was moving fast, and my heart pounded in my chest. I raised my bow, paralyzed with fear, and waited. The sound grew louder, closer, and I braced myself for whatever was coming. When the creature burst through the brush, I nearly screamed. It was like something out of a nightmare, massive and muscular, reminiscent of a beast from Dog Soldiers. The creature barreled down the slope, through the creek, and disappeared on the other side. I've seen some things in my day, but this had me shaking like a newborn baby. I held my drawstring for what felt like an eternity, unable to relax. This thing was enormous, standing around 6 to 7 feet tall and weighing about 250 pounds of pure muscle. Bears don't move like that, and I was completely unnerved. I kept my bow drawn, every muscle tensed, as I scanned the surroundings for any sign of the creature's return. As the sun finally rose, the birds began chirping again, their songs gradually restoring a sense of normalcy. I started to calm down, but my mind was racing with what I had just witnessed. I climbed down from my stand and got out of there as quickly as I could, my heart still pounding in my chest. While the experience was terrifying at the time, it has since become one of my most memorable stories. I made sure to move my stand and hunt elsewhere after that. I never wanted to encounter that creature again. I consider myself an outdoorsman, highly experienced in hunting, camping, hiking, and general survival. Growing up immersed in this lifestyle, I'm very familiar with wildlife and the intricacies of nature. However, a chilling encounter some years back truly terrified me. It was around June 2005, and I was about 17 years old, confident, perhaps cocky, but still knowledgeable about the outdoors. My family owned a cabin in Wisconsin where I spent every summer. Those summers were a blend of adventure and freedom, the kind only found deep in the heart of nature. While I knew the woods well, we always stayed in the cabin or by the bonfire at night due to the presence of bears, wolves, and cougars. The eerie thing about those bonfire nights was the tree line visible from the fire pit and beach. You always felt like you were being watched from the shadows, an unsettling sensation that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. By day, the woods felt normal, almost inviting, until that one unforgettable incident. My cousin and I were engaged in an airsoft battle. I was in full woodland camo, blending seamlessly with the forest while he was not. Seeking a tactical advantage, I retreated onto the ATV trail, and our game took us about 200 meters into the woods, roughly a third of the way up the trail. We'd had enough and stood at the edge of a clearing, chatting and catching our breath. He was about 10 feet from me when I decided to mess with him. I shushed him and whispered, "We're being watched." What started as a playful tease quickly turned into a chilling realization. He froze, and then I noticed the eerie silence. No birds, no rustling leaves, nothing. A wave of dread washed over me, more intense than anything I'd felt before, as I scanned the tree line and the other edge of the clearing, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw it. Its teeth gave it away first, gleaming in the dim light like a macabre grin. It was panting, staring intently at my cousin with an almost predatory focus. I don't expect you to believe me, but what I saw was a wolf the size of a black bear, at least 300 pounds. But it wasn't just a wolf. This creature stood on two legs, crouching beside a tree, grasping it with a clawed hand that looked disturbingly human. Its fur was a reddish-brown, blending with the shadows, but not enough to hide its monstrous form. I whispered to my cousin, my voice trembling, "We have to go." And the next thing I knew, he was sprinting. Panic surged through me, and I took off after him, glancing back to see the wolf-like creature now chasing us. The creepiest part? It was running on 2 feet, its movements eerily fluid and fast. As we gained a bit of distance, it dropped to all fours and seemed right on our heels, crashing through the brush with terrifying speed and power. For some reason, it let us go when we broke through the tree line and headed for the cabin. The sheer size of that thing haunted me. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall when upright, and instead of front paws, it had large, clawed hands that seemed capable of tearing through anything. I can't explain it rationally. Wolves may occasionally walk upright, but they don't sprint on 2 legs, nor do they grow that large. Black bears waddle on 2 legs at best. The closest description is almost silly, but what I saw was likely a werewolf or dogman. Call it what you will, but all these years later, I still think about that creature whenever I'm deep in the forest, the memory of its monstrous form and those piercing eyes seared into my mind. This chilling encounter occurred about a decade ago, but the memory still sends shivers down my spine. It was around 2 a.m., and I was making my way home after catching a friend's band performance in downtown Dallas. The highway was eerily empty, the quiet of the late night amplifying the isolation of my journey. There was a palpable sense of solitude as my car's headlights cut through the darkness, casting long, eerie shadows on the deserted road. After exiting the highway, I turned onto the road leading to my apartment, a path bordered by dense trees on the right-hand side. The canopy of branches seemed to close in, creating an almost tunnel-like effect, heightening the sense of unease that had begun to creep over me. As I passed beneath the traffic light under the highway, something caught my eye, standing out in stark contrast against the night. Stone sober and wide awake, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Emerging from a neighborhood street, a creature resembling a werewolf dashed across the 4-lane road in just a few strides. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to process the sight before me. It moved with such effortless speed and grace that it was immediately clear no human could have pulled off this feat in a costume. The creature was about 75 yards ahead, and it was unlike any werewolf I'd ever imagined. Completely canine with no human features, it stood on 2 legs. The legs were powerful, supporting a towering frame of approximately 7 feet, but its arms were reminiscent of a T-Rex, small and seemingly useless, hanging like a dog's forelegs. I felt a chill run down my spine as I took in its appearance. Its head was particularly strange, with bright, glowing yellow eyes that pierced the darkness, even though there were no headlights shining directly into them. These weren't the typical reflections you might see in an animal's eyes at night. They had an otherworldly glow that seemed to burn with an internal light. Most unsettling of all, the eyes were binocular like a fish's, distinctly visible even in the creature's profile. It felt as if those eyes were boring into my very soul. The werewolf-like figure ran into an open field, vanishing from sight by the time I reached the break in the trees. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I craned my neck, desperately searching for any trace of it, but it was gone, swallowed by the night. The speed with which it moved was astonishing, especially for something so large. It left an eerie silence in its wake, broken only by the sound of my own rapid breathing. To this day, I find myself questioning the reality of that moment. Did that really happen? I often wonder, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. Yet, every time I close my eyes and think back, those luminous yellow eyes haunt my memory, a vivid and terrifying reminder of that nightmarish encounter. The image of that creature is etched into my mind, forever entwined with the fear and disbelief I felt that night. It was a cool, serene evening as my family and I were making our way back from Chesapeake Beach, Maryland. We had just enjoyed a delightful dinner together, my brother, mom, dad, and I. I was 15 at the time, sitting in the back right passenger seat, chilling with my brother. The atmosphere in the car was relaxed, filled with the lingering warmth of family conversation and the gentle hum of the engine. As we rode along, I found myself lost in my thoughts, gazing out the window at the fading light. There was a small road on the left that merged onto the main road, and as we joined it, we picked up a bit of speed. We were cruising at around 25 to 30 miles per hour when we approached a small, bumpy bridge that forced us to slow down to about 20 miles per hour. As we crossed the bridge, my eyes were drawn to something ahead that made my heart skip a beat. About 75 yards in the distance, at the edge of the woods to the right, stood a figure. It was poised exactly at the tree line, its arms spread out with each hand resting on a tree at shoulder height. The creature was enormous, towering at about 7 feet tall, perhaps even taller, with a face that resembled a wolf, but was much more terrifying, like a dire wolf straight out of Game of Thrones. The creature's broad shoulders and muscular arms were covered in dark brown, medium-length hair. Its chest was barrel-like, tapering down to a narrower waist. I couldn't get a good look at its legs because, at that moment, it locked eyes with me. It was as if it knew I had seen it, and its gaze pierced right into my soul. "What the hell is that?" I thought to myself, a wave of terror washing over me. I had a clear view of it for about 10-15 seconds because of the distance and our slow speed. Its eyes followed mine the entire time, unblinking and menacing. The sight of it took my breath away, and my first thought was, "God, that thing is ugly." Its features were sharp and pointy, not resembling a Bigfoot, but more like an actual werewolf. Some people might call it a dogman, but to me, it was a wolfman. "Did you guys see that thing?" I blurted out to my family, my voice trembling. They all turned to me, confused, and asked, "See what?" This sighting was in southern Maryland, where there are no bears or other large animals that could explain what I saw. Despite my repeated questions, my family grew annoyed, dismissing my concerns. "Come on, stop it," they said, thinking I was trying to scare them. Over the years, whenever I told people about it, they ridiculed and teased me. "Oh, sure, a werewolf," they would laugh. Eventually, I stopped talking about it, but the memory never faded. I will never forget the sheer terror I felt when I locked eyes with that creature. I know what I saw, and that moment will stay with me forever, haunting my dreams and making me question what truly lurks in the shadows.